Good morning, Acts Church. Hey guys, just want to share a little bit from the one-year devotional reading this morning. There's some really exciting stuff that I hope this really encourages your faith in Jesus, our Messiah. I hope this really encourages you that, man, Jesus is the real deal. He's the real Messiah. He's our real Lord. He is the Son of God. So what I want to encourage you is this. So this morning in the 1 year, we're reading about, in the Old Testament, we're reading this really amazing story about Solomon and the temple. So we back up a little bit and say Solomon has been preparing and building the temple. And we get to this morning's reading, and what we find is that the temple is completed, and man, they're ready to celebrate the inauguration of the temple. And so here's the key thing that we read. It says this, it says, when he finished building the temple, that Solomon summoned all of the leaders, all the tribal leaders, all the leaders of each tribe of Israel. He summoned them together to come to Jerusalem to celebrate the inauguration of the temple. And so they get there and they're worshiping. But what the scripture also tells us is this, is that there's a specific time, an appointed time that Solomon summoned them. It tells us that he summoned them on one of the key festivals, one of the 7 key festivals of God, and that is the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Festival of Shelters. So on this day, on this time, Solomon says, hey guys, everybody come together. We are going to celebrate the inauguration of the temple. Well, what's the Festival of Tabernacles about, or the Feast of Shelters? It is about God coming to tabernacle among men, to be with man. And so let's back up and just remember what happened in the story this morning. So on this day, they come together, they're worshiping God on the Feast of Tabernacles, when we celebrate God tabernacling among men. And what happens? It says that the glory of God, the presence of God, came down and it filled the temple, and it filled it so much that the priests couldn't even stand. So literally on the appointed time, and the reason I keep saying appointed time is this, the Hebrew word in the Old Testament that we've translated festival, a much better translation is appointed time. So at the appointed time that God had fixed to do this, what happened is literally God's presence come and tabernacled among them. And I hope that makes sense to you. Now, here's what we know from Old Testament prophets, but also from the teachings of Jesus. We know that everything in the Old Testament was pointing to Jesus. Jesus rebuked the Pharisees, and he really just challenged his disciples by saying things like, hey guys, everything there points to me. Even the Old Testament prophets said this, like, hey, everything is pointing to the Messiah. They didn't know who the Messiah was yet, but it's pointing to him. And one of the things we know is that all the festivals, the 7 festivals of God, they all pointed to the Messiah. So therefore, all the festivals, including the Feast of Tabernacles, pointed to the Messiah, who is Jesus. So for example, the celebration of Passover, the celebration of Passover was about taking the sacrificial Passover lamb, the national lamb, and sacrificing it on a specific day at an appointed time to cleanse all of the nation of Israel from their sins. Well, here's what we know, that Jesus fulfilled the festival of Passover. How did he fulfill it? On the festival of Passover, on the exact day, the exact hour, this exact minute that the national Passover lamb was being sacrificed for the sins of Israel, at that exact moment, Jesus Christ was sacrificed for the sins of all the world. And so Jesus came to fulfill all of the festivals. And every major event in the life of Jesus happened on a festival. And actually every major event that is to come, like when Jesus returns, sets up his kingdom, is going to happen on a Jewish holiday or festival, because they are our appointed times by God. Now, what does this have to do with the Feast of Tabernacles, and what are we talking about today? Well, first of all, I don't want to shock you guys, but Jesus Christ was not born on December 25th. We celebrate December 25th as a day of the Jesus birth, and there's nothing wrong with celebrating that. But the reason we celebrate it on December 25th is because a couple of thousand years ago, Constantine, the emperor of Rome, and the pope at that time, Pope Julius, they needed to pick a date to celebrate the birth of Jesus, and they picked December 25th. They did not want to pick a Jewish holiday because there was all this contention among Christians and Jews. And so they didn't want to pick a Jewish holiday, so they picked December 25th to separate themselves from God's feasts and God's festivals. Now here's what we know. Again, nothing wrong with celebrating Christmas. Nothing wrong with celebrating December 25th. But it's not the actual day. We can actually look at Scripture and determine when Jesus was born. He wasn't born in winter. He was actually born in early autumn. And I'm going to share with you this morning how we know this. In Luke chapter 1, we know that Mary was conceived, Mary conceived Jesus in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy with John the Baptist. Now, how do we know this? Because Scripture tells us this in Luke chapter 1. So this means that Jesus was born 15 months after the angel Gabriel appeared to Elizabeth's husband Zacharias. So Jesus was conceived 6 months after the angel Gabriel appeared to Zacharias. So I had 9 months of that. So we know 15 months after this moment that the angel Gabriel appeared to Zachariah, we know that Jesus was born. I hope that makes sense to you. So how do we know when this happened? Like if we can determine when the angel Gabriel appeared to Zechariah and add 15 months to it, we can actually know when Jesus Christ was born. So here's what we know. We know from the Talmud and we know from historical sources when the angel Gabriel appeared to, and using the Bible to determine this as well, we know when the angel Gabriel appeared to Zechariah. How do we know this? Well, the Scriptures tell us that Zechariah was of the division of priest of Abijah. Now, why is this important? So by this time in Israel, there are a lot of priests, and the temple has a lot of ministry to do. But there's too many priests to serve all the time, and you couldn't have all these priests all the time up at the temple ministering, so they had to separate them into different divisions, and different divisions would be assigned different roles at different times in the temple. So you can't have all the priests up there all the time, but you would be assigned a specific time during the year to go up and minister at the temple in a specific way. Well, we know historically for a fact that the division of Abijah was ministering at the temple in the second half of June. So we know from Scripture in Luke that the angel Gabriel appears to Zechariah at the time when he's ministering at the temple. And if we take and we add 15 months to this, that puts Jesus being born in the 7th month on the Jewish calendar, which is going to be in the autumn, which is going to be late September or early October. Now let me ask you this. What happens in late September or early October? It's the Feast of Tabernacles. So we read this morning this amazing story about Jesus. About Solomon finishing the temple and the temple of God. The glory of God coming and being in the temple and filling the temple, and God, in a sense, tabernacling among men. But it was actually just a foreshadowing, a picture, a prophetic declaration or prophetic picture of Jesus being the fulfillment of this. And so Jesus was born on the Feast of Tabernacles. He was born this time to come and fulfill this amazing festival of God, this appointed time of God, to come and dwell among men. So in this morning's reading, when we're reading this and you're thinking, why does all this matter? Man, it should encourage us that Jesus is our Messiah. And that not only did several thousand years ago God's presence come and fill the temple, but God came literally in human form as a man, fully God, to dwell among men, to be our sacrificial lamb, to save us. And so, man, let's celebrate Jesus as our Messiah. Let's understand the Scriptures. Let's dig into it, and let's be encouraged that our Jesus is the right way. Our God is the right God. He's the one true God. And man, He does everything in an order, and I think for more than any reason to show us that He is the true God. Love you guys. Bless you guys. Have a great day.